Oh, is that me?
Oh no, that's a healthy scan, so you have some context. This is you.
Oh, wow.
It's ghastly.
The Toxic Avenger remake has an intensity problem. The remake improves upon the first film in almost every area of filmmaking, except it just doesn't have an edge to it.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Despite being advertised as a film offensive on par with the Terrifier franchise, the Toxic Avenger 2023 just doesn't have any bite to match all of that bark. The original Toxic Avenger was charming because it was violent and unpredictable. The movie opens up with an extremely graphic child murder scene that seemingly comes out of nowhere, and almost every subsequent scene starts out normal, then spirals out of control into tasteless chaos. The villains were extremely over the top, and the reactions that you see from the extras are probably real because those are just townsfolk instead of trained actors. Just look at the chaos that's being created by all of these extras that are squeezed into a tiny gym and given the direction to work out as hard as possible. There's just something charming about the magic of low-budget filmmaking that couldn't be recreated in the Toxic Avenger remake.
It was just the attitude, presentation.
The remade version, starring Peter Dinklage, is too clean, too professional, and plays it relatively safe with its version of edgy humor. The marketing for this film led me to believe that the Toxic Avenger remake was going to be a movie that was offensive and gory on par with the Terrifier franchise. What I got, however, was a movie that probably could have been PG-13 if a few dirty words were taken out. It had a far better story than the original, great acting from Peter Dinklage, Kevin Bacon was fantastic in this movie, and especially Elijah Wood I found to be very impressive.
Summon the nuts.
Okay, summoning the nuts.
But the movie as a whole didn't push the envelope. It didn't feel offensive or dangerous or have any building tension quite like the old film. I don't think there's a better way to demonstrate this than to compare the diner scenes between these movies. This is one of the very few scenes that were directly remade from the original, and its purpose in this one, other than nostalgia, was probably to have some hyper-violence for the trailer, so let's take a look at these two scenes. The Toxic Avenger remake starts this scene by introducing some of the hostage takers and making them ideology-driven terrorists. They talked for a solid 2 minutes and kind of go over mildly edgy manosphere-adjacent talking points like Western alpha male rule, being anti-science, and the dangers of groupthink.
Our once great Western society has been enfeebled by estrogenic thinking and moral turpitude.
What the f?
One of the terrorists shows a white power symbol to the only black woman in the restaurant who happens to be blind. Then the Toxic Avenger shows up and knocks a guy's jaw off with a mop. It's fairly gory, but comes across a little bit Monty Python in nature. As for the rest of the terrorists, they're literally all killed off camera in one quick scene that just shows them splattering against the glass and leaving some stains. Then it cuts to the inside to show you that all of the terrorists are dead, and you can look at some of the leftover gore. The Toxic Avenger in this scene is hailed as a hero. Everybody cheers and the scene kind of ends. And please note that during this entire scene, nothing scary, particularly intense, dramatic, or in any way shocking actually happened. The scariest thing that happened is watching the guy get his jaw knocked off, and the CG effects ultimately made it look a little bit silly. Now let's compare this scene to the original Toxic Avenger diner scene that it was hoping to remake. The original opens up with the busiest Mexican restaurant on the planet, where basically half the town was in the parking lot just because they knew that Troma was filming a movie in that city, so they were there dancing and having a bit of fun. Suddenly, a group of armed hostage takers show up out of nowhere and begin threatening people with a shotgun, a pistol, and various other weapons. The guy wielding the shotgun has insane face paint, is already sweating like a pig in this shot, and appears to quite literally be high on cocaine in real life. They threaten some people, and then the shotgun guy points the weapon at a baby. Literally at a baby, and I would like to point out that they didn't have any money for fake props in this movie. So that was probably a real shotgun pointed directly at a real baby, and the only safety they had in place was they probably just told the guy not to load it and put any shells in it.
You like Mexican food, little baby? How'd you like to have this hot tamale shoved down your throat?
That's intense and scary in and of itself. And it's very intense and scary in the context of this movie, wondering if the baby's actually going to get shot, because a child did get murdered moments before in this film, so we know that's not off the table. The manager of the restaurant gets RoboCop shot in the chest, squibs blowing everywhere with the shotgun. There's about a minute of them threatening a blind woman before the same shotgun guy turns and shoots her seeing eye dog. I can't even show clips of this on YouTube or I'm going to get demonetized. They shoot the dog. Not once, but they shoot the dog twice because apparently the first shot doesn't kill it. Whew, that's intense enough. Then the Toxic Avenger finally shows up. It starts a really sort of haphazard fight scene where you can tell that nobody has been trained how to do stunt work on camera. He rips a man's arm off. Then he makes an ice cream sundae out of somebody's face by suffocating them with the ingredients before drilling into their face with an ice cream mixer. It's dirty, it's nasty, it's clear that the actor is actually choking on these ingredients and is probably trying to tap out. Finally, the Toxic Avenger moves on to deep frying a man's hands and then throws the original criminal whose arm got ripped off into the oven to bake him like a pizza. Then the scene wraps up with him taking the dog to the veterinarian because somehow it's not dead and going off to bone the blind girl. There is a huge difference in intensity between these two scenes. Honestly, the diner scene alone from the original is more intense and more edgy than the entire rest of the remake all combined.
Looks like we've got a nice crispy taco supreme over here, Chief.
I haven't even had time to talk about the actual brutal child murder scene in the first 15 minutes of this movie, the gym massacre, the problematic amounts of nudity, and tons of other stuff. When you're watching the old movie, you just never had a clue what was coming because the filmmakers didn't play by the rules. The opposite is true for the Toxic Avenger remake. This was made by an actual professional team with professional actors, so it has an actual real story, whereas the original one kind of doesn't. It has character development, it has character growth, plot developments, there are setups and payoffs, there are emotional scenes that showcase good acting, the CGI gore is much more realistic than what we had in the old films. And there's more monsters and more wacky characters on screen than ever before, but everything is polished, everything is clean, every stunt is safe, every awkward moment is deliberate, every bit of offense is carefully planned. And to compare to the original Toxic Avenger, which we're speaking well of here, I have to be real with you, is barely even a movie.
Well, not by me. They were our two best producers.
It's got an extremely loose narrative that gives enough excuse to move from one chaotic violent scene to the next. There's basically no setup and payoff, not much in the way of character development, and some of the special effects are laughably bad. But what's not laughable is the sheer degree of insanity that is put on screen. This is a movie that was made with very few professionals involved, tons of non-trained actors, locations that they only had for one day and had to get the most of. They basically didn't have a script, and they had a team that never really intended to even attempt to get an R rating, so the entire film is a pure, distilled dose of unpredictable chaos from beginning to end, which ultimately gives a unique vibe that resonated with people obviously in the 80s, but still resonates with people today, that sort of chaotic, manic, frothing, fervent energy of moving from one wild thing to the next in the original is unfortunately not on display in the remake.
Okay, look, I don't appreciate being buttonholed like this.
The remake does have the downside of it's trying to capture and remake some ultra low budget filmmaking, which you obviously can't do with a high budget, but it also could not capture the offensiveness, the edginess, the raw, wild unpredictability of the original film. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this was a real production. It had a real budget. It had a professional director. We had a professional cinematographer. We had Peter Dinklage. We had Kevin Bacon. We had Elijah Wood. We had all this talent in one place. You have to have a plan and an arc and a growth. And what they missed was those really crazy, old school, intense vibes. The original movie was shot on a budget of peanuts and thrown together over about 2 weeks while everybody on the set was doing drugs and just working their own wacky ideas into the film. And because of all of that, it lacks the intensity of the original. So at the end of the day, I still prefer the original Toxic Avenger film.
Here's to better living through chemistry.
I don't want to tell you the remake is bad, because it's not. Objectively, on a for this type of film, well above average, but it doesn't live up to the pure insanity of the original. Guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. I gotta come up with a new outro for this channel, because this is the first Bedside media that we're actually doing from Bedside, where I enjoy everything on my little monitor here. There will be many, many more videos to come like this, so just whatever I'm watching, whatever I'm enjoying, whatever I've got an opinion about, buckle up, because we're gonna be diving in. Drifter out.